Well, I think James Connolly said it best when he said that their crimes would shame all the devils in hell. And just as the crimes of imperialism were legion in his day, they are legion in our day. Imperialism has run like a broken thread throughout human history, but so has resistance to imperialism. And in this regard, I'd like to take a moment to pay tribute to the Syrian Arab Army, Hezbollah, Iran, Russia, in short, all those whose efforts in combating this genocidal project of a latter-day Khmer Rouge has prevented Syria from being pushed into an abyss in which its minorities, people who can trace their presence in that part of the world back over a millennia and more, would have been gone, extirpated, annihilated. I'd like to take a moment to pay tribute to the people of Palestine, in particular 16-year-old Ahad Tamimi, one feminist icon that you won't see being celebrated in the pages of The Guardian anytime soon, or in CNN or the BBC, or at the Golden Globes. I'd like to pay tribute to the Cuban people, the Venezuelan people, in short, all peoples who are currently existing in the crosshairs of imperialism. Not because I think that their governments are perfect, far from it, but I know that they can never be perfect with imperialism, the jackboot of imperialism, resting on their necks. Greg Sharkey deserves huge credit for putting this event together. I know he has put in an inordinate amount of work to do so. He deserves a special credit for naming this event Imperialism on Trial. He could have justifiably named the event Regime Change on Trial, or Economic Sanctions on Trial, or War on Trial. But by naming it Imperialism on Trial, he gets to the proverbial heart of the matter, because all of the aforementioned are symptoms of imperialism, which in its broadest sense is the ideology of domination. I want to tell the story of Jimmy and Hamish, two young Scotsmen who went to fight in the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s, fighting the good fight against Franco's fascist hordes. They were captured and they were facing a firing squad, and the story goes that they were standing alongside one another, hands tied behind them against a post, firing squad arrayed in front of them, ready to execute them. And Jimmy turns to Hamish and goes, "Hamish, do you think we should ask for a blindfold?" To which Hamish is said to have replied, "Shut up, don't cause trouble." And I have to tell you that in 2018, we are, Jimmy and Hamish, we are facing not a firing squad, but we are facing a mushroom cloud, because the inflammatory speeches that we've just heard the other week from the US Defense Secretary James Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, which he put Russia and China in his crosshairs, in the crosshairs of the Trump administration's defense strategy, followed by Gavin Williamson's speech in which he said that Russia is a threat to the security of the British people. This leaves no doubt that the neocons have taken over the asylum. And I will hazard a guess that nobody in this audience, no one in London or New York or Paris, is going about their business today fearing an imminent attack from Russia. They're not fearing that they're going to be blown to bits by Russia or the Russian people. But they are walking around the streets of London and New York and Paris and elsewhere in the West with the thought in the back of their minds that there is a possibility of there being a terrorist attack, given that we've had a spate of such terrorist attacks. And isn't it absolutely absurd that we have NATO troops deployed on Russia's border at a time when Russian troops and aircraft are deployed in Syria, fighting the very same terrorists who have been carrying out the terrorist attacks in this country? And this is what I mean by the crimes of imperialism. The foreign policy of the West now is officially Catargo Delenda-esque. Carthage must be destroyed, which means to say Russia must be destroyed. Not a peep in protest from the mainstream media. These are the most inflammatory speeches by any UK and US Defence Secretary since any time since the Second World War, including the height of the Cold War. But rather than criticise or challenge this mantra, this anti-Russian mantra, we have a mainstream media that is an echo chamber of the establishment, that is actually beating the war drums. Karl Marx was right when he said that in any period, the ideas of the ruling class are the ruling ideas. And just think about that. Look around you. This is not the society that we chose. This is not our economic system. It's not our political system. It's not our way of government, and it's not our constitution. It's not our foreign policy. It's their foreign policy. It's been presented to us as a fait accompli in the spirit of like it or lump it. And they set the parameters, the narrow parameters in which we can contest, we can conduct our politics, we can talk about the economic system, we can talk about the government and the nature of government and the role of government and foreign policy. Yes, you're allowed to change a little bit here, tweak a little bit here, but the central ideology remains the same, which is unfettered capitalism and imperialism abroad. But when someone comes along and dares challenge these parameters and has any potential of gaining support and is actually a threat, then woe betide, for the forces of hell will be loosed upon them. Consider the media treatment of Jeremy Corbyn since he was elected Labour leader in 2015. And the biggest mandate of any Labour leader, I think, of any party leader since the Second World War, elected twice in 2016 on an even bigger mandate. I don't know if anyone saw the Andrew Marr show on Sunday. Jeremy Corbyn's been on the Andrew Marr show quite a few times now, and it's always in the manner of an accused in a court of law facing a public prosecutor, a miscreant who is a criminal who needs to be prosecuted. And yet Tony Blair, when he's on the Andrew Marr show, he's treated as an elder statesman, someone who should be listened to, the voice of reason, this man who destroyed Iraq and was party to the deaths of up to 1 million people, which spawned ISIS, which is responsible for the terrorist attacks that we are dealing with now. But the last episode of Andrew Marr was startling because Andrew Marr went on the front foot about Jeremy Corbyn's positions when it comes to Iran. He brought up the fact that Jeremy had appeared on the Iranian state broadcaster Press TV, as I have many times, and I will do so again. And he demanded that Jeremy Corbyn condemn Iran. Do you condemn Iran? Do you condemn Iran's record on human rights? I have to say, Jeremy's maybe a nicer person than I am, because he would have been well within his rights to turn that around and say, well, here I am on the station of the state broadcaster of a country that destroyed Iraq, killing upwards of 1 million people, as I just mentioned, spawning ISIS, that destroyed Libya. You have no right to take any moral high ground. The moral high ground you're standing on, Andrew Marr, is nothing but a stinking, rotting dung heap of hypocrisy and double standards. And when it comes to Andrew Marr, his former swivel-eyed Trotskyist, he could have gone further, because Andrew Marr, if you recall, was a man who, when he was the BBC's political editor, stood outside Downing Street on the 9th of April 2003 and was gushing in his praise of Tony Blair upon the fall of Baghdad, saying that Tony Blair is now a leader who stands taller and stands stronger. Even his critics will have to admit he lauded the Iraq war with undisguised orgasmic relish. And now he's doing his own show and he's excoriating Jeremy Corbyn, who opposed that war. But there are worse examples than Andrew Marr. Oliver Camm is a leading columnist with the Times newspaper, the Murdoch-owned Times newspaper. And in 2006, he wrote an article in The Guardian, titled, "We Were Right to Invade Iraq," in which he said that despite the mistakes, at least we confronted Saddam at a time of our choosing. Now, this was 2006. This was when the carnage in Iraq was at its absolute height. Robert Fisk informs us that at that point, up to 500 men, women and children were being slaughtered on a weekly basis. Suicide bombing attacks were daily. It was a sectarian bloodbath. And here's this individual writing those words as if it was still justifiable. Now, this clearly bespeaks a level of moral degeneracy that many of us would find shocking. And Oliver Camm, just as an aside, is also a wheelie bin sniffer. But this is something that Neil Clark can attest to in his remarks. But the point I want to make is that Andrew Marr and Oliver Cam, they really believe this stuff. They're not consciously telling lies about what's going on in Iraq or what's going on in Syria or what's going on in Iran. They really believe this stuff. What we have to understand is that their beliefs are as sincere as my beliefs. What they believe is not a function of lies, it's not a function of distortion or even dissembling, it's a function of ideology. And it's not like they sit in dark rooms and plan this stuff and say, we'll say this and we'll say that. They have internalized the nostrums of their own ruling class. These people go to the same schools. Eton, Harrow, Fettes College in Edinburgh, where Tony Blair spent his formative educational years, Oxbridge. These schools are our madrasas. These schools are hotbeds of fanaticism and extremism where the ideas of the ruling class are inculcated and then spewed out when these people go on to top jobs in the media and in politics. There are, of course, notable exceptions. I take a bow to our eminent former ambassador, Peter Ford here. But by and large, that is the pattern. These schools are where these people are inculcated with this born-to-rule ethos. This is the world that they have fashioned. They think this is entirely normal, but as everyone knows, what's normal for the spider is chaos for the fly. And their normal has been a source of unremitting chaos for the people of Syria. It's been a source of unremitting chaos for the people of Cuba, for Venezuela, for all over the world, with the chaos that they have sown. This is their status quo, and it's a status quo that can be simply described as class oppression at home and imperialism abroad. Best described by the inimitable Malcolm X when he said, you can't understand what's going on in Mississippi if you don't understand what's going on in the Congo. Now, for too long, they have had it their own way when it comes to controlling the mainstream narrative, the analysis of the news. And what is the role of the news? The news is there to shape public, if not consensus, if not fulsome support, at least acceptance and acquiescence in this state of affairs, in this world of chaos that they have inflicted upon us. But now we have alternative media. The only reason that we are talking about mainstream media and talking about it in the way that we do is because of alternative media, which is precisely why alternative media is being attacked. I appear on RT regularly. I present a radio show on Sputnik, and I am very, very proud to do so. No one there tells me what to say or how to say it. The things I say on there, I say on the BBC. In fact, there is a diversity of views on Russian media. There is a diversity of views in this panel tonight. You'll get more diversity on RT than you ever will on the BBC or in the Guardian newspaper. So alternative media is being attacked. Why is it being attacked? Because alternative media and the people on it have the temerity to ask the most subversive question in the English language, which is why? Why did we go to war in Iraq? Why are the Palestinians still suffering after 70 years? Why is Syria in such chaos? Why is there sanctions on Cuba? Why are we going after Iran, but we're close allies with the Saudis? Why are we supporting dictatorships? Why did we overturn the democratically elected socialist government of Chile in 1972, the Allende government, the other 9/11? Why did we topple the democratically elected government of Iran in 1953 of Mossadegh? Why? And this question is so powerful, and I'm reminded of the sage words of the Brazilian Catholic Archbishop Dom Helder Câmara when he said, "When I give food to the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask why they are poor, they call me a communist." Now, you don't have to be a communist to ask the question why, but you certainly have to be awake. So everybody on this panel tonight has felt the lash of the mainstream media. They call us cranks, they call us stooges, they call us Putin's puppets, they call us a sadist. But yet, why do they attack us if we're so marginal? Why take the time to attack what we do? It's because we ask the question why. I'm not going to take too long because there are other speakers here and want to have enough time for people to ask questions, but people ask me, what do I see my role as? I'm minded here of the African proverb, until lions have their own historians, tales of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. And with the emergence of alternative media, the lions now have their historians. We can put the case for the Syrian people. We can put the case for the Cuban people, for the Venezuelan people. we can put the case why Russia should not be our enemy. We've just celebrated, or commemorated rather, the 73rd anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. It was Russian, Soviet Red Army troops who liberated Auschwitz. It wasn't British troops, it wasn't American troops, the epicenter of the Holocaust. And I'm expected to believe that Russia is my enemy, Russia, who's been the most decisive and effective out with the Middle East in fighting terrorism. I will never accept that. And when they start saber-rattling against the Russians and the Iranians and the Palestinians from now on, I just ask you to spare a thought for Jimmy and Hamish. Thank you.